My second question to Minister DeWeaver. Minister, I want to ask you about some old business. About 7 or 8 weeks ago, you made a presentation in Parliament about your ministry's economic recovery plan and tax reform, specifically to abolish income and profit tax in a phased approach. What has been the progress in implementing the tax reform proposal?
Thank you for the question. Actually, right after this, my chief of staff and the Minister of Finance, we have a meeting with third parties to discuss our way forward on this. And I'm smiling because I actually see some progress happening, especially after discussions with the Minister of Finance several weeks ago. And after today's meeting, I will see how far we get with it, and I'll be able to give you another update. So thank you for that. So today is the day at 12 o'clock with that meeting. As another note, I just wanted to clarify something because I realized I missed a part of the question that Dr. Sok asked. It was about the number of imported cases. So the number of imported cases to date is still less than 5. So I just wanted to put that out there. But the main point, insurance is for risk management. That is the point of us doing this insurance. We have limited medical resources on the island, even with the assistance that we have received from the Netherlands, with the AMI team, with the extra place outside of the hospital. So the whole point of this right now, which is why some countries are only now reopening, is because we have to manage our limited medical resources. This is why it's important for our largest group of visitors to be able to get the access to be medically evacuated to the USA should we reach our capacity. Thank you both very much for the question and the opportunity to clarify.
The reason for asking for a meeting at this time has to do with the fact that the matter of decolonization is very, very current. Of course, it is one of the topics that the government of St. Martin has been asked to distance itself from in order to continue the negotiations for the liquidity assistance that the government of St. Martin has requested from the Dutch government. But what we have seen is that members of parliament continue to receive emails from the Pro Sualiga Foundation regarding different matters, and especially the matter of decolonization. In fact, one of the most recent emails from that foundation is an email indicating, or rather advising Parliament, why Parliament should not retract its decolonization stance. As you know, this again was a request not to Parliament but to the government from State Secretary Knops. So I have deemed it necessary to ask the Parliament, because they are the ones, a majority of Parliament, have passed a motion on the 5th of November of this year regarding this entire matter of decolonization and the Pro Sualiga Foundation. The Pro Sualiga Foundation, in fact, in that motion has been endorsed by the Parliament of St. Martin. So when I look at this motion, which by the way, I did not support, but when I look at this motion, which has passed because a majority was in favor of the motion, and then I see Mr. Denisio Bryson of the Pro Sualiga Foundation communicating with members of Parliament on the different topics, then it makes me want to question whether the foundation is doing this, so is advising Parliament on the basis of the motion. And so I have asked some very specific questions. And where would we deal with questions like this? We would deal with these questions in a meeting of Parliament, in a committee meeting of Parliament. And so my questions are to the point, and after informing the Parliament, which the members know, of course, of this communication from Mr. Bryson on one hand and the Pro Sualiga Foundation on the other hand, I would like to know that, or whether Mr. Bryson and the Pro Sualiga Foundation are acting in an advisory capacity to Parliament. So that's a question. Is that the case? And if it is, then does this relationship with the foundation, so between the foundation and Parliament, does that relationship stem from the motion of Parliament of November 5th of this year? Because remember that the point number 3 of this motion reads, and I quote from that motion, the Parliament of St. Martin endorses the initiative and legal actions of Foundation Pro Sualiga related to the decolonization of the former Netherlands Antilles, as well as the private initiative in Curaçao with a comparable objective. So Parliament is committing itself to the Pro Sualiga Foundation and its legal actions, mind you, as well as a private initiative on the island of Curaçao. So again, I continue with my questions and I ask whether the decision, so that decision in the motion of Parliament has been communicated to the foundation in any formal way. And if so, I would like to know what exactly was communicated on the basis of that motion to Foundation Pro Sualiga. And then, of course, the question would be as well, what rights can the Pro Sualiga Foundation derive from that motion? The communication that we are seeing now between this foundation and members of Parliament, my question again is, are these documentations and exchanges, are they part of Parliament's official records? This is the way that Parliament engages or should engage with other parties. And then I want to know if there's any payment to the foundation involved based on that motion, where again the Parliament has decided, a majority of Parliament has decided to endorse the legal actions of this foundation. What exactly does Parliament understand? So those who have formulated and supported the motion, what do they understand under endorsing the legal actions and initiatives? So the question is there any payment that is going to be involved because the Parliament is endorsing this foundation? And I want to know, if so, if that is so, then what are these payments? And whether the Parliament foresees any other cost involved with the endorsement of the initiative and the legal actions of the foundation. Is there a projection of this cost if there is such a cost? And then I would like to know, has any payments been made to the foundation on the basis of the endorsement by Parliament of the foundation's legal actions? Because at some point I can imagine that there will be, if there has not already been, a cost involved in the legal actions that the foundation has undertaken.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
The Member of Parliament also mentioned that the entity would exist for 7 years. As far as has been explained or further elucidated, especially in the documentation on the entity itself, it is proposed for 6 with an evaluation in 3 years. So there's an opportunity as I mentioned in responding to MP Bunkamper, that there are opportunities before and during that the consensus is lost and it would cease to exist. So as such, members of parliament, I believe those were the few questions that had been provided, requested. I want to, Mr. Chairman, take the opportunity to thank not only the National Alliance and the UP factions which support this government, but all the other factions that have shown understanding for the position of government at this time, whilst also agreeing that the method being used is more than likely a bit inappropriate. Many can say this across the board. The only way we can change the narrative is to continue to stand for the people of St. Martin, and I must reiterate that in every conversation, whether on the technical or political level, that continues to be said. And I know that as members of parliament, you also have the ears of the members of parliament within the Netherlands and throughout the Dutch Caribbean. And I implore you to continue to seek ways in which to ensure that the, let's call it, forced consensus does not become the norm for this, what another member of parliament has called so-called kingdom. And that we should be able to function and have open and honest dialogue with each other with mutual respect, honesty, fairness, and integrity forming the main part of it.
The USP faction will not stand in your way, Madam Prime Minister, but we will evaluate the proposed legislation and plans when they are submitted to Parliament. We will not be forced to agree to something as we are not privy nor privileged to the details. We all know that the devil is in the details. I will remain consistent. I will do my research, evaluate every proposal when presented, and vote using my free mandate, not under duress, but certainly in the best interests of this country and its people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the USP party for your statements, and this is indeed what, in my opening statements, I asked for. That definitely Parliament will get the opportunity to go through all the documentation once it is returned from the Raad van State, and I expect Parliament to do its due diligence as well. Indeed, I believe, as one of the other members mentioned, MP Marlin took the opening of my closing remarks out of my mouth, basically, in terms of not even quoting the late Vance James Jr., but just in listening and in deciding how I would want to end this discussion here today. History indeed has been a great teacher. It has taught me that the prepared will inherit the world. And I believe St. Martin is ill-prepared at this moment to make a step different to what we are forced to make at this time. We've had 10 years of quasi-autonomy made some strides, which have been highlighted in our 10-10-10 commemorations. A lot of us didn't even know what was before and how much fight had to go into what was there. And some may even feel like we've taken a few steps backwards in agreeing to what is now on the table. But due to the lack of follow-through and insufficient progress, or progress at a snail-like pace, we are where we are today. We did not sufficiently capitalize when things were good in St. Martin, and so not being financially independent after 3 or 2 disasters in the past 3 years makes it what it is. Our resilience, despite the lack of the execution in the short term of the trust fund, has been proven because what did came about due to the hard work of the business community, the local population, and community helping community, investing in each other and helping each other. Our one-pillar economy was able to see us through back then, even with limited hotels open because of the cruise industry. However, with COVID-19 and how it has affected the world, there is not even that income to sustain us at this time. So it is literally what it is.
Prime Minister Jacob, yesterday, I think on Monday, you got the clearance from Parliament, the declaration basically to go ahead and sign. What I am asking you is a clarification. There's still some confusion within the community. Did anything whatsoever change in the coho legislation that the Holland is putting forward since Curacao and Aruba signed off. Yes, St. Martin didn't sign off. We're still in discussions, wanted certain changes. I think I heard you said nothing changed, but if that's the case, why did it take so long, the last minute, also for St. Martin to get on board? So first, did anything change, anything whatsoever? I know you just said that you're working on a memorandum of understanding to make sure that nothing happens, nothing changed with regards to the autonomy of the country, but can you give us some clarity on that?
Thank you, Bibi. I made an extra long statement this morning, hoping to bring clarity to that part. And I know part of the presentation made this morning, as well as what was made in Parliament, explained what had changed. What had been presented to us in July was the Caribbean Reform Entity. After the discussions with Curacao, certain changes were brought, minor changes to the law, but most of the changes to the Memorandum of Explanation, the toelichting, where it could further clarify, I guess, the spirit of the law, as you may call it. As many of us, all three countries, had concerns in terms of the authorities of the coho, or the chair as it was then CRE, now called coho. The addition of development was put in the title because it's not only looking at reforms, but also at development. So the changes that Curacao brought forward and that Aruba brought in before it went to the Raad van State, that is the draft that we, as St. Martin, I mentioned very clearly, are expected to agree to, with the understanding that the Raad van State will make its advice. We have gotten clarification, just like Curacao and Aruba got in their deliberations, as to the authorities, etc. And it has been clarified that it will not usurp our authorities. That was made clear to us. What it will do is manage the agreements that we make for the landspakketten, the country packages. It will regulate if we decide in this agenda, what do you call that in English? The executing agenda of what is agreed upon on a timeline and the financing necessary and the human resources necessary, how that will be disseminated. It will decide that. That's what the coho will decide. But if a reform requires legislative changes, it has to go through the regular process, just like every other law, which means government will have to draft it, send it to the Raad van Advies, send it to the, through the governor to the parliament. Parliament deliberates on it. So we still get our opportunity as a council of ministers to take the necessary decisions. Yeah, so that was explained. How the funding will come will depend on the different situations. So there's no bag of money as people expect. We're getting liquidity support today. We're going to get liquidity support as needed going through. And once we have our own budget to carry our weight, then the liquidity support will stop. And the only financing that will come through the coho would be for ontwikkelingen, for reforms and or development projects and programs as determined. And in those discussions and agreements, then it will be determined whether they are grants or whether they are loans. So what we're getting now for liquidity support, 61.2 million is a loan, 30 million as a grant for the prison and for the building as well as programs related to that. That's a grant. And what we fought bitterly for, but weren't able to change their minds on, except to get a stay, let's say, on an execution of it, was what was in the DPO under the Trust Fund for Financial Management and the Tax Office. That is not going to be released via the DPO any longer because they are fearful that the Trust Fund will run out of funds and executing programs will not be able to be finalized. So the promise is there that if by mid-2021 that is still available, we would be able to get a grant of $15 million euros out of that fund still, but being handled through the coho.
the innovative Banco-Matico contactless smart card. Your Banco-Matico smart card is now equipped with a contactless feature for payments, so get ready to tap and go. Contactless payments are fast, easy, secure, and accepted worldwide at all Maestro-enabled contactless terminals. Tap for transactions equivalent to or less than 100 NAF, or the US dollar equivalent. You will receive notifications via email anytime you tap. Tap, tap, and pay fast. Fast with WIB. For more information, visit our website at wib-bank.net. Tap and go with your partner in progress.
I have a few questions actually, but I'll start with the police. And I listened to the minister give sort of a timeline or explanation concerning this function book, because the function book has sort of been a hot topic. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister, in speaking to a number of officers, even union individuals, it seems to be shrouded up. It comes over with this function book of Kilindongo from 2016, seems to be the basis that they are saying, why is this not being used, seeing that the function book of 2016 has already started, and then all of a sudden now, minister after minister seems to come and change. So a question I have is why is this one not being used, since some of the personnel already received their position from the same function book of 2016? In addition to that, why can't this be used for all personnel? And we are talking about the function book of 2016. Also, Madam Chair Lady, right through, Madam Chair, I listened exactly to the minister. I would like to ask this question. With this same, wasn't this the same book, or the function book, or the basis that was used by the previous minister, Duran, to pay personnel in advance at the beginning of this year? So, I mean, there had to be a legal basis that was used so that some of the personnel who received this money from the sale of UTS, that the governor signed off on, finance minister signed off on, the whole caboodle signed off on it. Wasn't it the same function book that was used of 2016 for the legal basis for the personnel to receive an advance at the beginning of this year?
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. But thank you, Minister. Thank you for your presentation. You have inherited a monster. That's the reality. You've inherited a monster, and now you have to be the monster slayer. But you are determined. You're determined, and I admire you for that determination. I have to applaud you for the stance that you've taken as it concerns the Immigration and Border Protection, because that is where it belongs, in its own organization. And I say that why? Because I was there. It's the first ministry I worked at as a policy advisor. And, you know, it'll always have my heart. I remember that we were building an organization that St. Martin could be proud of, the IBP. There was even once talk about maybe some mergers, let's say with customs, if we look at countries around the world. So it is important that the organization finds its place again. And it is also important for us in moving forward with this country that we look at what does it mean to be St. Martin, and what should our public organizations look like? Not what's happening in Curacao or however Holland has their organizations situated. What does public reform look like on St. Martin? And we need to say how our organizations should look like. That is my point. And so I just have one question, Minister. When you mentioned, through you, Madam Chair Lady, strengthening the IBP, is there a space for the hiring of new staff, or is there an option for persons to transition from one organization to another? Because I know there are some that might say, you know what, I want to stay with the police. How will that look like in terms of the transitioning of staff from one area to another? As it concerns overtime is always an issue, especially in government. But I know that our justice workers, many of them put in quite grueling hours. Minister, do you believe, through you, Madam Chair Lady, that overtime is used to supplement low salaries? Because if that's an issue, we know, and that's why the whole issue of the function books is so important because salaries need to be adjusted, scales need to be adjusted. So is it that overtime is used in that sense?
One of the things that I think is important for any minister, and in particular also our Minister of Justice, is the issue of the competency of legal advice with regards to these challenges that is being faced in the justice system. I will continue to repeat this, Madam Chair. The issue is, again, consistency with regards to the advisors that are working on a consistent basis in these departments, whereas ministers change all the time because of, unfortunately, political situations. So what I'm saying is, I've always said it, and I'll repeat it also, the issue of the legislative, executive, judicial, and also what I always call the vierde macht, is that of the civil servants or those that work on the department on a consistent basis, where the minister or present minister or former ministers depend heavily on advices that are given by these persons. And I believe it is very important because, Madam Chair, why I mentioned it this morning, before I came here, Madam Chair, before I came here this morning, I got a call and I was told, there are some civil servants in some departments, Madam Chair, this morning that are still hindering certain processes and so on. And I'm saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Especially at a time such as this. You're shooting yourself in the leg, or I would say in the head then. It really bothers me, Madam Chair, to have to repeat the same thing over and over again. And I have been a civil servant working for 20 years, so I know exactly about these things. But, Madam Chair, again, this is not the time for it. This is not the time for it, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the issue of overtime, I will not go into that. But again, everything needs money. Everything you do, education, health, whatever it is, you need finances, Madam Chair. And I believe that we should do all that it is within our power to ensure that whatever is done administrative-wise and so on, that we look at how monies are being spent. And again, I come back to the issue of the departments where persons are in charge of the finances to ensure that proper management is taking place, because we are getting hit left, right, and center by the CFT as to our financial management. And based on the overview that the Minister presented to us with regards to finances, we have a lot of work to do, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and through you to the members of Parliament. Your questions have been noted. I appreciate the response that I've received and the questions. I think that they are very healthy questions that we should address, and I look forward to us coming back or the meeting being resumed so that we can respond to them.